Browns win. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they will not be going winless in the AFC North this year. I'm laughing because I have never seen a team that is in the hunt for a playoff contention, or for playoff contention, I should say, sabotage themselves like that in a game. I thought the Steelers were going to come out in the first half and play like they did. You know, Myles Garrett cannot get the sack record on us by any means whatsoever. Even that means if our offense looks bad. Okay, that makes sense. Because the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously, with only being down by, 7 at the end of the game, 4 for the majority of the game, but 7, it was 13-6. And the Browns' offense is just so bad that the Steelers can get away with doing that and making their offense so vanilla and bad and, kind of like that they could have won the game. And they didn't. They had a shot at the end zone. And for whatever reason, they attack the Browns' best corner in Denzel Ward. Like 3 different times on that drive. And neither of those attempts to attack him resulted in completions. That's crazy to me. I don't know how you attack Denzel Ward, the best corner the Browns have on that team. Especially on 4th and goal. Why? I think it was Valdez-Scantling that was on him too. And I get DK Metcalf is suspended for the rest of the regular season for being stupid. You should not be punching fans. Fans are going to say what they're going to say. They're going to get, if the fan says something horrible, they're going to get punished for that. They're going to get, banned from NFL stadiums for life because they're stupid. But players, you cannot do that. And Metcalf, he got the anger that whatever the fan said, if the fan said anything, or if that was just DK, I don't know. I wasn't there. But you can't let that do that, and unfortunately that just cost the Steelers the win against the Browns. I will say definitively if DK Metcalf is in this game, the Steelers probably win by maybe 2 scores. And it's a double-edged sword for me. For one, we beat the Steelers. That's always great, This is our first win we've had in a while. This is Shedeur Sanders' second win since his first win since his first ever start, So this is good for the Browns. The last home game of the year, you send the fans home happy, on a good note. Browns fans did show up for this game, which was really, really cool to see. Myles Garrett did not get the sack today for the record, but like I said in the halftime video, the Cincinnati Bengals are they don't have a good offensive line. They struggle against Myles Garrett. So Myles Garrett will probably be getting the sack. He is a sack away from breaking the record. I think he's a half sack away from tying the record. So he'll at least get a half a sack against Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals next week. And if he doesn't, man, that sucks. But, the Browns won. And that's all that really matters right now. Now, like I said, it is a double-edged sword. The Browns did beat the Steelers, but this also hurts the Browns for their draft positioning. Shedeur Sanders is not this franchise's quarterback. Can we just admit that now? He made horrible mistakes today. He should have had not 1 but 2 pick sixes. He tries to throw the ball to Jerry Jeudy across the field, which ask any quarterback, if you are scrambling and rolling out to your right, the one thing you never do is throw it back across the field to your left, or vice versa. And he does that. Jeudy was wide open, but, that's a scramble drill. You can't do that. The defense is obviously shifting to where you are running for obvious reasons. And he tries to throw it back because he thinks, I don't know why, but he tries to throw it back. It doesn't go far enough to the sideline. Jeudy has to wait there. That allows the defender to catch up to Jeudy, and he picks it off in a jump ball situation when, the defender was in front of Jeudy. He just boxes Jeudy out and goes up and gets the interception. If the Browns would have given up a score there, this game would have fallen completely on Shedeur Sanders' shoulders. And luckily the Browns defense held, and the Browns did end up winning. But this is the Pittsburgh Steelers and an offense that literally gave up a playoff spot to make sure that the Browns, or Myles Garrett in particular, did not get the NFL sack record. Mike Tomlin, I hope that that decision is worth your job. Because if you lose to the Ravens next week, you might get fired. It is what it is. You might get fired if you don't make the playoffs this year. And you're not, I don't think the Steelers are going to make the playoffs if they lose to the Browns and the Ravens in back-to-back weeks. Depending on what happens with other teams around the league, but still. If the Steelers don't make the playoffs this year, Mike Tomlin is most likely going to get fired. Steelers fans have been calling for Mike Tomlin's head for years and years and years now. Is that finally the straw that breaks the camel's back? Probably, honestly. So I really hope that Mike Tomlin thought long and hard about that. Is this Myles Garrett sack record worth my job? Because if it is, why are you still here? And if it isn't, you just made one of the worst decisions as a coach you've ever made in your career. And you're up there as one of the greatest coaches of all time. And you are so petty because of TJ Watt and Myles Garrett's beef and their history and them going back and forth. And you wanted to prove a point. So you gave up the game because Myles Garrett was one sack away from breaking the record. And Aaron Rodgers, to his credit, did a really good job at avoiding Myles Garrett all game. Now, eventually that caught up to him because he had then only would have one read plays right to Denzel Ward, and the Browns made adjustments and put Denzel Ward on the one read there. And 4th and goal, you just throw it, and Myles is coming up, but Aaron Rodgers is so scared of getting sacked in this game because probably Mike Tomlin tells Aaron Rodgers, hey, do whatever you have to do to make sure Myles does not get this record. And that's what he did. And the Steelers lost. And not only did the Steelers lose, they weren't even allowed to score a touchdown from the Browns defense today. And Boswell nails 2 field goals. Great job by him, by the way, in the swirling conditions it was in Cleveland today. And it was raining when he made the 2 field goals, and the wind was gushing all the way, and it was swirling. And then the Steelers asked Boswell to make a 50-yard field goal in swirling winds and not great conditions in a stadium that he has historically struggled in. And what does he do? He misses it. And that is the last chance the Steelers got to score points. Now, if you want to count the 4th and goal, sure. But, that was it. That was it. The Boswell's 3 field goal attempts, he made 2, missed 1. And the Steelers' 4th and goal, attempts that eventually ended the game because they could not make it in the end zone. So if you're Mike Tomlin, I hope that this game was worth your job. And either way, this is the same thing. Like I'm gonna go back to Ohio State, Michigan because that's kind of what I feel like I specialize in. It's the same thing with Jim Harbaugh and when the cheating scandal came out. Either one, you knew what was happening and you cheated, the likely scenario, which is bad. Saying I knew what was happening. I made sure that because we were losing to Ohio State again and again and again, I had to make a change. I told Connor Stallions, hey, you can do this. Make sure you put all the play calls that they have on a sheet so we can have it on the sideline and do that. Cool. Either that happened and Harbaugh knew, and it was a whole thing from Harbaugh to Stallions and down the line to Sharon Moore and everybody else. Or Harbaugh didn't know that was going on, and that therefore says that he had no control of his team when Stallions was on the team. And yes, Michigan did go on to win the national championship, but either way, that's bad. So Mike Tomlin, either you sacrificed maybe your job, for sure the game, maybe your job, and a playoff spot to either mess with the Browns draft stock or, or draft positioning, not draft stock, but the draft positioning, or you wanted to make sure that Miles did not get the sack record on you. Either that, or Aaron Rodgers just like, you know what, the whole thing with Brett Favre and Brett Favre giving himself up so the other guy before TJ could have the record, I forget his name. I don't want that to be on my thing because I don't want TJ to be mad at me. That either one. Because clearly the Steelers all game were like, Myles Garrett is not getting the sack record on us, even if we lose. And that's what happened. All game, Aaron Rodgers had a mental timer being on 2x speed. It was like you holding down your phone if you're watching TikTok or whatever, or something like that, or Instagram or something like that. It's like your mental timer in your head. Imagine just pressing it, holding 2x speed. That's what Aaron Rodgers was doing all game when he had to throw. So it's great for us because we obviously won the game, but it is horrible either way you look at it for the Steelers. Either Mike Tomlin said we're not getting this, or Aaron Rodgers said it. And if Aaron Rodgers says it, then Mike Tomlin has no control of his team, which is a whole nother issue. That's probably even worse. And in that case, he should be fired. And I know Browns fans are saying, oh, well, when we fire Stefanski next year, which is going to happen regardless, if we fire Stefanski and the Steelers fire Tomlin, why don't we hire Tomlin? No. Because if that is Tomlin, why does anyone want Mike Tomlin on the team after this right now? Why? Now, if the Steelers come back next week and play their best game they played all year and make the playoffs and maybe even make a run, highly unlikely, but even if they do make a run and eliminate the Baltimore Ravens from the playoffs, either way, it's a win for us. We either see the Steelers get eliminated because of us, or we see the fake Browns get eliminated. Win-win for the Browns. Either way. And does anyone really trust any one of those teams to make a run in the playoffs? No. So, there's that. Denzel Ward had a great game, as I said. Shedeur Sanders had a not good game. It might look like he had an okay game on the stat sheet. He should have had not one, but maybe even 2 pick sixes in this game. Had the horrible interception. Had a strip sack, or had a fumble that ended up being recovered by the Browns, so it didn't really count. But Judy had his best game of the season, even though he didn't score a touchdown. Hopefully, Fainin is okay because he is out now. Schlesinger also got hurt. Kind of a lingering injury. So hopefully he's okay. Maybe you even sit him to make sure he doesn't get any long-term injury next week. I don't know if that affects his Rookie of the Year candidate, him not playing in the last week of the season. But maybe Schlesinger already has that thing locked up. You never really know there. Myles Garrett didn't really have a good game, but that was also because the entire offensive line and Aaron Rodgers was doing everything they could to make sure that Myles did not get a sack in this game. He did have a few tackles for loss and did really good in the run game. Alex Wright had a really good game because Aaron Rodgers was so focused and the offensive line was so focused on Myles Garrett that Alex Wright was able to get a key sack late in the fourth quarter. I think it was the Steelers' second to last drive of the game. But really, really good. I feel like it's successful, and it's really good when the Browns actually do beat at least the Steelers or the Ravens one time in a season. Of course, the past few years, we've gotten to beat both of them at least once in a season. Of course, this year that unfortunately did not happen. But we still beat the Steelers. That's probably going to be it for the Browns. But I do really want to talk about Michigan really quickly. I was going to talk about it in the halftime, and I completely forgot. But Michigan hires Kyle Whittingham to be their next coach, head football coach of the Michigan Wolverines. I mean, it's a good hire. Don't get me wrong. It's a good hire. But is this good for the long term for Michigan? I don't know. Because obviously there's going to be a a transitional period next year. Michigan's schedule is extremely hard next year. So what does that do for Michigan? Whittingham is going to come from being in a school that is, no offense Utah, but they are the second to BYU. BYU just is obviously a lot better. They were the 12th ranked team in the college football rankings, and the final college football rankings was one of the first two teams out of the college football playoff this year. Beat Utah, went to the Big 12 championship game and ended up losing to the number 4 team in the country in Texas Tech. BYU is just a better team in the state of Utah right now. It is what it is. Sorry. So Kyle Whittingham is coming from a team like Utah over to Michigan. Michigan, a team that has one of the deepest pockets in terms of, NIL spending and donors and that kind of thing. He's coming to that where there's going to be so much pressure on him because he is Kyle Whittingham, because he has done really, really good at Utah at bringing, 3-star, 2-star, 4-star type recruits into Utah and making them one of the top recruits one of the top players in the country. Dalton Kincaid from the old Utah from like 2021, 2020-ish Utah. Kincaid is there. Covey, I remember Covey. I'm just going off of the Ohio State and Utah Rose Bowl, if anyone's curious, because that is literally the only game I have watched that I actually cared about Utah. But in all seriousness, I've been watching Utah from afar. I've respected Utah ever since the Rose Bowl game from Ohio State. They gave Ohio State everything that they could in 2021. That was of course, if anyone does not know, Ohio State in 2021, that was the first year that Michigan beat them. So Ohio State was coming into that Rose Bowl very angry and very shell-shocked. And Utah came into that game beating a team that Ohio State lost to that year in Columbus in Oregon, not once but twice. They beat them and were Pac-12 champions and did have a few losses that kept them out of the college football playoff. And that was, of course, the year that they had a few tragedies on the football team as well. They had 2 players that unfortunately did pass away in gun-related incidents. So they were kind of, the tribute to them was them going to the Rose Bowl and having one of their best seasons that they've had in their history. And Ohio State was coming off the loss to Michigan, not going to the Big Ten championship for the first time in a while. And, Ohio State was mad. And Utah came out with Cam Rising and Covey and Kincaid and all of them. And what was the linebacker? I think it was Devin something. He's in the NFL. Devin Lloyd. That's what it is. Devin Lloyd was on defense as well, I remember. And they gave Ohio State everything they could have. We're up, I think, by 21 points on 3 separate occasions, I think. That was also the game that Jackson Smith and Jigba really put himself on the map. Would eventually ended up being his last true game at Ohio State. His Jackson Smith and Jigba the next year was plagued with injuries, and he eventually did end up declaring for the draft in 2022. But this game was the game that cemented Jackson Smith and Jigba as far as NFL scouts go in the first round. And, he had like 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. was also on that team. He had 3 touchdowns in that game as well. CJ Stroud really grew up in that game. And it showed a lot of Ohio State's weaknesses on defense that eventually have plagued them ever since. Now they've gotten it together for the past 2 years, but this is about Utah, not Ohio State. So after that Rose Bowl game, I have kind of respected Utah, supported them from afar, obviously not going to be my favorite team, but I have also respected Utah, rooted for them in big games. They beat USC. They destroyed USC, which allowed actually the next year in 2022, them destroying USC and winning the Pac-12 again, propelled Ohio State into the college football playoff after the loss to Michigan in Columbus. And, of course, Ohio State played Georgia that year. They lost by 1 on the kick at midnight, all that kind of thing. But Utah has been, up there as jeez, that's bad. Sorry. Utah has been in the hunt for college football playoff, the rankings and all that kind of thing. They've been in the hunt for titles. And Whittingham, I believe that he was the coach that took over for Urban Meyer. So Urban Meyer, if anyone does not know, went to Bowling Green, then Utah as the head coach, had success at Utah, ended up getting hired as the Florida head coach, retired for a few years and went to Ohio State, and now has retired, went to Jacksonville and then retired again for a year. And all of that, Urban Meyer went to Florida, Ohio State, retire, Jacksonville, the Jaguars of the NFL for a year, and then retired again. He's been... and all of that, Whittingham has been at Utah and coaching Utah and building up Utah. And now he is going to Michigan. And, he's been a very good developmental quarterback as well. And, I'm sorry, I just got an alert that I thought that said Nico was entering the transfer portal. It was not. I think it was one of their backups at UCLA. But sorry. Anyways, Utah and Kyle Whittingham. He has been known for developing talent that have not been, given the 5-star kind of stuff like that. Lesser recruits, kind of like Mark D'Antonio at Michigan State. If that's kind of like the West Coast guy. The modern Mike D'Antonio is Kyle Whittingham at the West Coast. Now he's coming over to Michigan, and he plays, kind of the style that Michigan wants to play. Play good defense, could be really, really good in the trenches. Run the ball, stop the run, limit possessions, all that kind of thing. And the thing about that is Michigan, and they don't recruit as well as other Big Ten. I shouldn't say that. They don't recruit as much as the top tier teams in the country, and the Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, USC, those kind of guys. They don't recruit as well, but they develop as well as everybody else in the country. And, what comes with that, though, is learning curves. And those kind of things and hiccups come along, and those kind of take a year or maybe even 2 to work out the kinks of that kind of thing. So with Michigan, they're not really known for coming out and punching you in the mouth, especially early in the season. They're not going to be... they're not going to be this quick turnaround. It's going to take a few weeks to get going and building up momentum. But in Michigan's scheduled next year, it's a gauntlet. I think they play like Oregon, Indiana, Oklahoma, and then Ohio State. And I think they maybe even play Penn State too. So just to name a few of those. And so it's a gauntlet of a schedule for Michigan. And I don't know if next year is going to be a good time for Michigan to be able to make a run. Their window might not be open yet. Of course, Sharon Moore, I used this analogy before with the Browns, but Sharon Moore, he closed the window and put a padlock on it. Now, Sharon Moore basically just hands the keys over to Whittingham, and Whittingham's got he's got to find the key in all these, like, the rings and stuff. Imagine, like, a janitor's, like, ring, keychain and stuff like that. Whittingham's got to find the key and then figure out how to put the key in the thing and the padlock and unlock the door and open the door or the window. Geez, I'm all over the place today. But maybe Michigan comes out and next year and with Whittingham and gets the ball going and hits the ground running with Bryce Underwood in his second year. But maybe I think it's more likely that it doesn't happen. I think it's more likely that Michigan in Kyle Whittingham's second year of being at Michigan is the one that really allows Michigan to take the swing at making a run at the national championship and making the playoff and building momentum like that. I don't know how long Whittingham is going to stay at Michigan. I imagine it's probably not going to be longer than in 8 to 10 years at the very most, because he is up there in age. I think he's in his 70s. So we'll see how long he stays at Michigan. Let's see how, we'll see how long Michigan keeps Kyle Whittingham, I probably should say. But this does allow a little bit of a bridge, and as much as Michigan fans hate it, they always want to be Ohio State. They always want to copy Ohio State. The Michigan versus everybody thing, that's a knockoff of Ohio against the world. Don't believe me? There's a flag right there. Ohio against the world, that's a thing. Michigan versus everybody, that's a knockoff. Michigan tried to be Ohio State with Sharon Moore and Jim Harbaugh, Ryan Day, and Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, after the end of the 2018 Rose Bowl against Washington, hands the whistle over in the locker room and crowns Ryan Day as his choice for the head coaching job. Of course, Ohio State obliges and gives the head coaching job to Ryan Day, and off Ryan Day goes, and the rest is history. Michigan, after their national championship win, Harbaugh hands the keys to the kingdom over to Sharon Moore. Very late in the cycle, Harbaugh was most definitely running from the punishments that were coming against Michigan that eventually really never did come. They got like a few fines and show causes for individual coaches. But Harbaugh was running to the NFL to take the Chargers job very, very late in the cycle, so Michigan did not have a full, offseason to look for a coach. And, they say, you know what, let's just hire Sharon Moore. And Sharon Moore was a bona fide hype man. And he is not a guy that needs to be or should be a coach at any Power 4 school. He is a guy that is on the sideline waving a towel around and trolling the fans. That is what Sharon Moore is, and Michigan just handed the keys of the kingdom over and said, here's our head coaching position, go win us the national championship, and that's not who Sharon Moore was or is. And clearly, he is not, after everything that came out against him. We're still waiting on, what that's going to come as far as Michigan is concerned, and even Sharon Moore personally. So you never know. But that is my 2 cents on Kyle Whittingham and the state of Michigan, and a little bit of a rant there. But end up close this and tie a bow around this. The Browns do beat the Steelers. Does hurt their draft stock a little bit, but I don't think anyone really cares about that because we beat Pittsburgh. So Cincinnati next week, Miami and Ohio State. That is coming on New Year's Eve. So I'll do videos for that as well. But until then, go Dogs.